Hello, welcome. Today we will talk about the Kalpurush Kundali. When we start learning astrology, the first part involves a bit of mathematics, and later on, we move to the productive part. I was never that interested in the mathematical part. I was eager to learn the productive aspects. One important formula in production is the placement of different planets in houses and their results. For example, if the Lagna Lord is in the second house, you will connect your family, resources, money, and savings will all matter for you. Lagna Lord in second affects family finances, in seventh shapes personality. So your family, resources, money, savings, all these things will matter to you. The Lagna Lord in the seventh house shows that your partner shapes your personality. They shape you based on how strong the Lagna Lord is and what sign it is in. These principles state having the fifth Lord in the Lagna is a much better placement than the Lagna Lord in the fifth house. The concept is the same. Similarly, having the Lagna Lord in the 10th house is better because you create your own destiny through hard work. What's the issue with the 10th Lord in the first house? Similarly, having the Lagna Lord in the 10th house is better because you create your own destiny through hard work. 10th Lord in first house, initially it may cause illness. The work is coming to you on its own. You will always be thinking about work. But it is said that when the 10th Lord is in the Lagna, it can make you a bit sick initially. You might face some illnesses, so you remain a bit weak. Now, to understand all these points and formulas, the Kalpurush Kundali helps us because its base is actually the Kaal Purush Kundali. Whatever our rising on sign is, now behind the scenes, the Kaal Purush Kundali is always at work. So this concept will sound very interesting to hear. Wow, this is something different. It seems just about right. We learn something new, but when we apply it to charts, it feels a bit difficult to understand what the ultimate use of this is. We will also take example charts and understand this concept, which will help us in grasping the formulas. Let's get started. The Kaal Purush Kundali is always working behind the May scenes. We should always use the Kaal Purush Kundali as a base so that we can understand the natural significations of the planets and the energies associated with them. We understand this because it works like a blueprint, and we should never let it go. Why shouldn't we let it go? And how should we look at it? Let's move forward and discuss what we need to look at. In the Kaal Purush Kundali, the Lagna Lord rules the first house and the 8th house, as well as all the house lords. They are high 10th house. They are debilitated in the 4th house. The significators of the Kaal Purush Lagna are the sun. This means that my Lagna Lord goes anywhere. It carries the energy of Mars, the first house, the 8th house, and the sun within itself. It sounds a bit weird, right? But trust me, this is a very, very important concept. Now, for example, if someone's rising sign is in Gemini, we will look at where the Lagna Lord Mercury has gone. Wherever they have gone, like if they have gone to the 10th house, they carry the energy of the first house and the 8th house of the Kalpurush, along with the energy of the significator, the sun. In this way, we get to know a lot about the good and bad placements. In the Kalpurush Kundali, we get two benefits. We can see what is happening behind the scenes for any rising sign. The first thing is how we need to decode the formulas. As I mentioned earlier, we consider the fifth lord to be more favorable in the Lagna, but we do not consider the Lagna lord. Look, when Mars goes into the fifth house, it carries the energy of the 8th house as well, and it also brings the sun along with it. When two fire planets enter my chart for a special lady who is trying to conceive and hold a pregnancy, the water element becomes very important. There can be pregnancy issues, problems like miscarriages, and abortions. On the opposite side, when the fifth lord comes into the Lagna, when the fifth lord, the sun, comes into the Lagna of the Kalpurush, it is exalted there. And it brings along the significator Jupiter, which is the significator of the fifth house. So you feel, right? You feel positive about your kids. Do you feel that racing with children is helping to groom my personality? I have become more confident after having kids and I am moving more towards learning. So, this is the base. Why do we say that? After this, we also say that when the Lagna Lord goes into the 10th house, the Lagna Lord of the Kalpurush, see, it becomes exalted in the 10th house. So obviously, when your personality is becoming strong, you feel uplifted. In work, you feel that as a person, I have built my life on my own. When the 10th Lord of the Kalpurush comes into the Lagna, it becomes debilitated. That's why it is said that those children tend to be more ill initially. They face problems. Even with money, there is still stress and burden from work. Saturn, Sun, and Mercury signify the 10th house. In Lagna, pride, confidence. Sun and Mercury signify the 10th house. In Lagna, they bring benefits. Mercury enters Lagna. If they come into the Lagna, then of course they will give me pride and confidence because the sun is coming into my Lagna. Along with that, Mercury will also come into my Lagna, which is the lord of the third and sixth houses of the Kalpurush. So my nature will become a bit stronger. Because of the sun, I want to prove my work. I want to get into learning and exploring new things. And it will also give me a competitive ability because my sixth lord has come into the Lagna. All right. So this I forms base for understanding why the Lagna Lord of Leo is better in the 10th house. No matter what your Lagna is, you must always consider the Kalpurush's chart. Lagna Lord of the Kalpurush. If the Lagna Lord goes into the 4th house, it becomes debilitated, which means that the person will prefer a comfortable and easygoing life. There may be problems with your own people, and they can also carry the energy of the 8th house, leading to disputes. In the house, Mars has a nature that is somewhat similar. Now, it becomes a bit difficult to step out of the comfort zone. Now, since they are the lord of the 6th house, they also bring along the significator of the 8th house, Saturn. That's why there are problems and difficulties at home. Even getting inheritance and property. Sun and Saturn are in our 4th house, which benefits material things. It might be beneficial in that sense, but for personal matters, this placement is not favorable. Lagna Lord in 4th is less pleasing than in 10th, 5th, and 7th house linked to love marriages, but can sometimes not lead to marriage or cause issues. Lagna Lord in 4th versus 10th house, 5th and 7th houses linked to love marriages. The association of 5th and 7th is associated with love marriage, and it is forgotten that the association of 5th and 7th sometimes does not lead to marriage, or there are many problems in the marriage. The 5th house represents our mind and intellect, so we always need to use our brains when it comes to marriage. So why is it called We Are Not a Piece? Because the 5th lord of Kalpurush goes into the 7th house and moves downward. Jupiter is in the 5th and 7th houses. The 7th lord in the 5th house faces an enemy sign. This association is unpleasant. If the 7th lord also goes into the 5th house, it gets a fire element sign, which is an enemy sign, and that is also not very comfortable. The 5th and 7th house link is unpleasing. Venus rules both but is weak. The 2nd and 7th houses are both ruled by Venus in the Kalpurush chart. If we talk about comfort, money, or even marriage, the significators and rulers of both are Venus, which is in a debilitated position in the 6th house of the Kalpurush chart. They are exalted in the 12th house. The 7th lord in the 6th house is the worst, but if I have to pick one house, then house 6 is the worst. Kalpurush's 7th lord in the 6th house is weak. If the 2nd lord of Kalpurush enters the 6th house, finances may benefit. Now, having a connection there and then going into the 6th house for 20 seconds won't be good. For the family atmosphere or for relationships, it is believed that if the 3rd lord goes into the 12th house, all your airports will go down. The same thing should be said for the 3rd and the 6th, that your struggles will increase. We do say it, but it is worse for the 3rd to go to 12th. It is worse for the lad to go to 12th. Compared to the 3rd lord going into the 6th. In the horoscope of Kaal Purush, the 3rd lord is exalted in the 6th and debilitated in the 12th. You might face struggles, and your efforts are going through struggles. But eventually you will come out sharper, stronger, and very intelligent person. It's often said that I learned through struggles. That's the third lord in the sixth house. But we can forget the significator of the third house is Mars. Mars will feel much better in the sixth house compared to the 12th because it is using its energy correctly in its own element. If we talk about the association of karma and dharma, whether it's the association of both lords or an exchange between them, it holds significance. Ninth lord in 10th house affects fortune. 10th lord in ninth house is favorable. But think about it, if the ninth lord in the Kalpurush chart goes into the 10th house and moves downward, it means that your fortune won't support you as much. The ninth lord enters the fourth house. Jupiter and the sun are present. Fortune will come easily from home. In the significator of the ninth house, along with Jupiter the sun, now as the lord and such a significator, we will welcome Jupiter in the fourth house and say that your fortune will come to you very conveniently. Everything will come to you easily, right from your home. But since the sun is also coming along, it won't feel as comfortable in the fourth house. Today, if we compare the 10th to the ninth lord, going into the 10th house, we would say it's good for work and reputation compared to personal life. If the ninth lord comes into the fourth house, it will create a connection, but it can negatively impact the father's health, the home environment, and reputation. The rising sign you have received also shows similar combinations. Mars and the moon, even friends, can become enemies due to each other's weaknesses. Not necessary. All our friends should be the ones who lift us up. Some friends can also be the ones who bring us down. That's the kind of relationship the moon and Mars have. Now, the fourth lord is going into the eighth house, and Kalpurush's lord enters the fourth house. This strains their relationship, providing inheritance but being detrimental. This means that the relationship between the two is even and strained. They may provide inheritance and property, but their association will be detrimental for many factors. Just like your energy isn't utilized properly, and there's no mental peace. Why energy is Mars? Why mental peace is the moon? Similarly, if the 10th and 11th lords of the Kalpurush chart, which are Saturn, come into the 7th house, they are exalted there. It's in your friend's zodiac sign. So this placement is very good for making money, for careers, for business, and for practical relationships. However, what Venus needs cannot be completely provided by Saturn. So there might be a bit of boredom in the relationship, an overly practical relationship, provided if Saturn is not afflicted, then it's not that bad. In fiction, we discuss some negative aspects of relationships, but still, having the 10th and 11th slots in the 7th house is considered good. Similarly, if we talk about the significators of the 10th house are the Sun and Mercury. Their presence in the 7th house can lead to ego battles in relationships. Mercury rules the 3rd and 6th houses. This means that the airport will be involved in relationships and will be considered good for business dealings. After discussing all the theoretical aspects, now we come to the main issue. We won't always get Aries rising. In this case, I have found Taurus rising, and I need to keep the Kaal Purush Kundali at the back of my mind. My ascendant lord is in the 11th house, exalted, and is with Mars. This means that my designers will be very high. I want to achieve many things in my life, and the lord of the work triangle Mars is with me, so that confirms it. Now, when I think about Kaal Purush, I think that Mars and the Sun are sitting in the 11th house in Aquarius. This means that I will fight for it. I will prove my worth. I will go get it, but there might be some ego battles or fights with my siblings and within my network circle, which is also confirmed by March with my Legan loaded in the 11,000. Because their rulership is of the 12th house, and they are natural significators. Astrology involves analyzing the rising sign and ascendant chart along with the moon and Libra charts. The Kalpurush Kundali can be confusing, but is essential for understanding chart energies. For Gemini rising, the ascendant lord is exalted in the 4th house and debilitated in the 10th, differing from the Kalpurush Kundali. The 10th lord in the 6th house suggests strong service skills, confirmed by the Kalpurush. Mercury in the 6th house indicates business success. Consider the position of any lord in the Kalpurush Kundali to understand rising signs. It might happen that sometimes you feel that the placements in the Kalpurush Kundali are different according to my rising sign. For instance, if I talk about Gemini rising, my ascendant lord is exalted in the 4th house and debilitated in the 10th house. So it might seem like we are discussing something completely different. According to the Kalpurush Kundali, we will also talk about the impact of different rising signs. When I said that the ascendant in the North 4th house becomes a comfort convenience seeker in Gemini rising if Mercury goes into the 4th house and gets the support of Venus or some other planet that makes it more comfortable, then for another child's chart, I would definitely tell their parents to involve their very intelligent child in some sports activity so that they don't become too laser focused or someone who just sits in one place to work. Because this is an earth element sign, and it might happen that in Gemini rising, even if my ascendant lord is considered debilitated in the 10th house, this person is very intelligent. Despite their limitations, they will prove themselves. So I'm trying to say that first, understand the energy of your own chart and then keep the Kalpurush in mind to see if it supports or goes against it. Similarly, the 10th lord of this chart is in the 6th house and is exalted, so I would say they will be good service providers. They will know how to work, and working with them will lead to growth. And if I talk about the Kalpurush Kundali, I would think that my Kalpurush's 10th lord, my significators, the Sun and Mercury, are placed in the 6th house. We have already discussed this. This is a businessman. So for me, their significator Mercury is more significant. Mercury being in the 6th house and being exalted in its own sign indicates a very successful businessman. What my chart confirmed? The Kalpurush. Also confirmed, you need to keep in mind the position of any lord in the Kalpurush Kundali, whether it is exalted or debilitated, where their second sign is, and where their Mool Trikona sign is. All these things need to be considered, and this is how different rising signs are understood. I hope you learned something new today. Thank you so much.